right, and we're now ready to start our second last presentation of the day. We have Louis Marcoux, who's going to be taking us through 3ds Max for mobile games. Now, of course, 3ds Max has been a very popular tool in the gaming industry, and even more so in the mobile gaming industry for a number of years now. So there are a couple companies we've recently been talking with and doing stuff with, and Louis is going to take you through some of the workflows involved in their projects. So, Louis, go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much, Sean. Yes, for the next half an hour, we'll be talking about casual game. And I'm going to use two projects. The first one from a game called Band Together. It's a game for the iPad 2. And I want to thank my friend John Chalfant and Dave Taylor for letting us use their material for the game. And for the first part, using Band Together, we're going to take 2D content, or content traditionally done in 2D, and brought into the 3D world. So we'll see techniques to bring 2D content to 3D world. The second part, we're going to do the opposite. We're going to use 3D animation tools to render sprites for Flash 3D games. And for that, I'm going to use content from Subatomic. We're going to use the game Fieldrunners 2. And I'll show you some excerpts of those games as we are going through the demonstration. So first off, we're going to start with 2D to 3D for a casual game using the content from Band Together. So again, Band Together. And I'm going to play the preview here so you have an idea of what the games look like on the iPad 2 and 3. All right, so it's actually not coming soon. It's now out, so you can go and download it on the App Store. So every idea starts with a sketch. So we have a 2D sketch here of the Bandy. That's the main character for this game. And you saw in the game that the Bandy is trying to avoid or trying to fight against pin stack machines. So that's kind of the idea for the game. So we have the Bandy here, and we'd like to bring it into the 3D world. So it's a 2D drawing. What I can do in Max, we can import multiple formats, and including 2D formats. So we can import AI file. I'll go here and say import, and I'll bring in the AI files, the Bandy outline. So when you have something in vector shape, either it's an Adobe Illustrator or it's coming from a DWG file, if you have the outline for it, you can bring it into the 3D space. Once you've got the outline into the 3D space, you need to place it at the center of the world. You need to make it ready for exporting to game engine. To a game engine. And actually, as I'm doing this, I will go back here and start Unity in the background as I'm doing this because I forgot to start it. Because my goal here is to bring 2D content and export it to Unity when we're done. So we have our 2D guy here, and I want to bring it at the center of the world. So in Max, we have this nice little tool called the Transform Toolbox. And the Transform Toolbox, you can go here and say, I want to rotate this guy in like 90 degrees. And I can say, I want to place the pivot point at the center of this character and at the minimum in Z, so that we can have it at the bottom of the character here. And I'll take this character and say put it at the center of the world. So very quickly we did some basic operation to bring our character at the center of the world in 3D space, and we're going to start to extrude it to give it some depth. So I'll go here into the modifier stack. We have the editable spline right now. That's what we have. If I add an extrude modifier, we're going to be able to give it some depth. So if I just increase it a lot, you'll see that this is how we give it depth. But I'm just going to give it just bit of depth like this, and we're going to start making some other modifications to make it look pretty. So now it's pink. Just going to make it more of a kind of a yellowish color. But now that we have an editable poly modifier, we can start to make some modification to this character. So if I grab the neck here and I say I want the neck to move backward, something like that. I want the belly here to move forward. I want the pelvis to move back, and I want the legs here to move back so that we have some 2D, 3D, a little bit more depth into this character. And I'll do the same thing with the arms here. I'll just move them forward, and you see that now we have a bit more depth. I'll do the same thing with the eyes here. I'll grab the eye here and this eye over there. Oops. Let me just move this back, kind of thing, and grab the eyes and move them forward like so. Now we just moved elements within the mesh, but I can go back here and start to model with the advanced modeling tools inside of 3ds Max. So the modeling tools are in the graphite toolbar, and it's a context-sensitive menu, which means that right now I'm working in polygon mode. So I've got all of the polygon menus here. So if I switch to vertices, you'll see that the tools will change. Those are the vertices tool. Same thing for edges. It's going to change for the edges tool. So it's all context-sensitive. Right now I'm going to go in face mode. I want to do some extrusion, but I want to bevel some of the extrusion. I want to have a round shape, round shape for this. So I'll bring in the bevel settings. And it's going to give me an in-canvas menu that I can start to play with to adjust the roundness of this here. I'm going to extrude it a little bit, maybe round it like that. I want to do it another time, so let's something like this. And now we have eyes that are a bit more round, and they're going to be more 3D than what I had at the beginning. So if you continue to do this for a while, you're going to get a model that looks like this. This is their final production mesh. This is it. Now we're ready to start to add some textures to this. If I want to add texture in 3ds Max, we have a nice 3D painting tool called Viewport Canvas. It's a layer-based painting tool, so I'm going to bring it in here, Viewport Canvas. And if I move it to the side, you see that I can go here and say, I want to assign a standard material to this guy. I'm just going to select it first. Assign a standard material, diffuse color, 1024 by 1024 for the resolution for this, and I'm just going to override whatever we add here. So paint canvas, yes, I'm fine. Override that PNG file, and OK. So now you'll see that we're going to get our layers, very similar to a workflow like in Photoshop, and it's actually fully compatible with Photoshop, and I'll show you that in a second. So now if I start to paint on my character, you see that in full 3D, I can start to add details to this character and make it look the way that I want. Of course, that's not what I want for now. I want to give it more of a better look. So I'm just going to open up the material editor, and I'll go into the slate material editor, and I'll create a standard substance map. And I don't really need it to create a material. What I want is I just want to take a look at the map and use it as a reference for starting to paint on my model. So what I'll do here is I'll go and I'll load a substance. And you saw from the game that it's a cardboard kind of look. So if I go into here, I'm going to grab crumpled paper. And it's going to give me a crumpled paper material. I can now go here and change the random C, give a few variation. I can make it less or more crumple. I can change the amount of dirt on this, and I can also change the overall color to give it more of an orangey kind of look. When I'm happy with this, I can right-click and say Render Map, and I'll make it 512 by 512. And say render this, and it's going to give me this window that I can just leave up. Now, I don't need that anymore. So if I go back to the paint layers, I'm going to add a new layer here, and I'm just going to move this forward. And now I can use this to paint, to clone. Anything that's visible on the screen will be clonable. So I can have multiple maps open. I can go on Google, open up a few images. I can go in my own image bank and start to open up multiple images. And I'm going to use them as clone sources as a palette to start to paint on this character. So if I go into the paint behavior here, I'll say I want to clone source from the screen, no matter where it is. And then I'll just go here in clone mode, and I'll say I want to grab from here. Going to make the brush a little bit bigger, and I'm going to start to give it the material that will look more like crumpled paper. So I'm going to paint on this guy here, a bit more like that. I'm going to grab a different area here, paint the body here, grab a different area, and start to paint the legs here. And I can go on like that until I'm happy with the with the final result. There we go. So we have this this texture for the crumpled paper. I'm going to close this down. I'm going to add a new layer. And I'm going to reduce the size of the brush, and I'm going to do the contour here for the face. And what I'd like to do now is I would like to add some dirt element around this contour that I just did. So I'll add a new layer. I'll bring it under, so it's going to be under my black outline. And I'm going to use a mask, so just this splash kind of look. I can scatter this, add a bit, whoops, not too much, maybe 5 will be good. And add a bit of spacing, something like that. And then in the randomization here at the bottom, I can randomize the brush radius, the opacity, the spacing, and all of that. So I'm not going to randomize that too much. I can also randomize the rotation. So if I say just random, now I can start to paint on this. I'm going to use a different color for that. Let's say some kind of beige here. And I'm going to paint around the edges there, something like that. So we're giving it a bit of detail. Now I'm going to change the transfer mode. I'm going to use color burn. So we're going to get something that looks a bit more like that. I can define the opacity of that layer, and I can also add some blur filter or some very rough filters, some nice filter that will look less, that will make it look less rough. And here we go. So we got our separate layers. So what's good with this layer system and this paint system is that it's fully compatible with Photoshop, which I'm going to get to in a few minutes. But it's also fully compatible with the rest of 3ds Max. So let's say I want to limit the painting. I want to start working on the eyes, but I'd like to use the elements inside of 3D. So those are 3D elements within my mesh. So what I'll do is I'll close this down for now, and I'm going to turn off the viewport canvas. It's going to ask me what do I want to do with my texture. Since I used a PNG file that doesn't support layer, I'll say, well, save as a PSD and replace the texture currently in the material. I'll overwrite this PSD file, save it. Yes, we're fine. But because we saved the PSD file, we kept all of our layers as we were painting. So now I'm going to go into Element. I'm going to grab these 2 eyes, go in Rendering, and render a surface map. I chose 1024 by 1024 as my surface resolution for this map. I'll render a selection to bitmap. So what it does, it just takes all the faces that are currently selected, renders a mask for it. So I'm going to copy this, close it down, close this down, and if I go back to my painting tool and bring back the 2D dialog, I'm going to add a new layer at the top. I'm going to say Layer, Add Mask, Reveal All, and while I'm on the alpha or the mask, I'll just say here, Paste from Clipboard. And now if I go back to the RGB channel and turn off the mask here, I can grab a green color, something like that, maybe, whoops, this one here, and then I can start to paint on the eye. But because it already has a mask, I'm able to kind of go way faster, but the painting is limited by the scatter here. I'm going to turn it off. So now we're able to paint on the eye here, and it's fully limited by the, I'm just going to make it bigger to do the other eye, something like that. And here, oh, I'm randomizing the brush radius here, so I'm going to turn this off. Here we go. And now we have our eye painted. So we have multiple layers. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to turn this off so that we are able to go. It's going to save the modifications that we've just done. And what I'll do is I'll go in Photoshop and I'll open up that file. So what we did is we've saved that PSD layers.psd. I'm going to open it up, and you see that we have all of our layers with our mask available in Photoshop. So a tool that we don't have in the viewport canvas is the text tool. So I'm going to go here in the text tool, and I'm going to type in some text, and I'm just going to place it at the center of the face here, and I'll go File and Save. Now I can just close down Photoshop, and you'll see that my text layer now appears over there. But because, like I said, it's a full 2D system, it's a full layer-based system. Oops, going to select the object. Here we go. You see that my text layer is here, and because we have it's on a separate layers, I can go and move it, rotate it, and place it exactly where I want it to be. I can even move it on the body if I want to, so it's all there. Everything is here, and I can scale it down and say that's going to be my text here. And then when we're done, we can just say turn it off, and now it's going to be baked into our texture, and it's also on a separate layer. So all of these are texture tools that allows you to build a texture for your character. So this is how it looks like in the end. This is our bendy as painted and as textured by the guys from the game group. So this is the bendy. Now we're going to go into animation, and we're going to start to animate this character. So I'm going to load up the final production mesh here. So we got our production mesh, and we'd like to animate it using the tool set inside of 3ds Max. There's different ways of animating with 3ds Max. So we have Max Bones, we have Biped, but also we have the system called CAT, Character Animation Toolkit. So it's a very powerful system to quickly create character rigs or any types of creature rigs for your production need. For example, I can go here and say, I want to work with an alien, so I'm just going to go add in an alien. We have presets for quadrupeds, so if I go here and say, I want to add a quadruped, so it's going to bring in a panther. I can go back here and even add a centipede. So the centipede has a lot of legs. So all of these are presets that you can load in, and they're ready to use and ready to animate with. And they all have the same functionality. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to show you the cat rig that was done for this character. So you see we have the cat bones over there, and we also have the gizmos, the control objects, in order to be able to animate it. So if I want to animate with this character, we got a few choices. So right now I can use the absolute layer. The absolute layer allows me to go in auto key mode and create a few keyframes to make it do exactly what I want it to do. So if I want to lower the pelvis and just maybe lower the hand here and maybe move the rotate the head forward, so something like that. And I want to grab the leg here and maybe move it forward. So all of these, oops, I didn't turn on auto key. All of these here can be recorded, and we can do some animation like so. So I'm just going to move this down here, and something like that. So this is what we call the absolute layer of animation, where we manually animate the character onto what we want to do, what we want it to do. So that's one way of animating. But if you do any type of walk cycle for a game, the other way of animating is to use the cat motion. So I'm going to delete this layer here and add a cat motion. The cat motion is a procedural walk cycle. So you're going to get your character walking. I'm going to bring in the cat motion here, and you can define a few things. For example, I can say, well, this character is walking way too fast. I'm going to slow it down, maybe to 35 frames for the full walk cycle, walk loop. Sorry. And I can say, well, this character is having too much stride length, so I'm going to reduce this to maybe to 70, and you'll see that its stride length will be a bit shorter. And I can go back here in the pelvis group and start to adjust the attitude of the character. So I want the character to roll his hips a little bit more. I can adjust that. I can go and play with the lift so that it goes up and down a little bit more, so he looks a little bit more happy as he's walking. So all of these things can be adjusted to give it the walk cycle that you want. So it's a nice way to animate walk cycle and to start blocking a shot by having your character walk into the scene. So you save a lot of time doing that. Another way to animate with this is to use a new feature of Max 2013 called the Animation Store. So the Animation Store is a bank that is online, so an animation bank that's online that you can load onto your character and preview in real time in the viewport before you buy anything. So it's a great source to start prototyping ideas or to get animation already done, ready for your character. So let's go and see how we can use the Animation Store. So if I go in more here and bring in the Animation Store, you'll see that it's going to connect to the Animation Store. I'm going to click on the pelvis to know that that's the character that I want to work with. And I'm going to go here and say Search Motion. So it's going to go on the Animation Store. It's going to list all of the animations that are currently available on the Animation Store. And since it's online, it can be updated, and you can have more animation available every day. So if I go here and dance, let's say I want to have my character do some salsa. I'll search the motion for salsa. And we have a few salsa dances there, so I'll just grab maybe this one. And you'll see, because there's this button here called Preview in Scene, you'll see that now it's downloading the animation, and we're going to be able to see it directly on the character in a few seconds. So right now, we're not baking any keyframe, we're just previewing the animation, and we decide if we like it or not for our scene. I can go back here, so I'm going to grab this one, see if it's going to work. So you can try a few ones, and depending on the one that you like, you decide to buy only when you're happy with the animation. You have a few settings to adjust here. So if I want to adjust the stance, I can adjust that. It's going to readjust the animation to make it a bit lower. If you want to have the arms to be a bit wider, you can adjust that. All of these things, every animation comes with its own setting for you to adjust and make it and customize it to your needs. So that's the Animation Store inside of Max 2013. I'm going to turn off Preview in Scene here, and I'm going to deselect the character. Another way to animate with Max 2013 is the use of Motion Builder. So Motion Builders are real-time. You saw some demos today about how you can bring in motion capture data into Motion Builder. So what I'll do here is I'll select all of the character. And so I'm going to grab everything about my character, and I'll say Send to Motion Builder as a new scene. So it's going to send my character to Motion Builder. And go into Motion Builder here. It's going to load the character. So it's now pointing with a different camera. So I'm just going to delete this camera and look at Motion Builder like so. Make sure that my settings here, interaction mode, is set to 3ds Max. Here we go. And you see that as we are in Motion Builder, it says here that we're connected to 3ds Max. So I can start to animate with this if I want to. So I can add a control rig to it. And now we're going to get the full body IK. So if I want to animate with full body IK, I can grab the hand here and say I want to make this character reach this point. And that's all the beauty of FBIK, is that the whole character will follow when you grab in and push it into a direction. So our goal here is to bring in an animation from another character. So in the tutorials here for Motion Builder, there's an animation called Punched. So I'm going to bring in Punch and I'm going to merge it into the scene. And this is the animation that we have for Punch there. So this character is kind of, this is a motion capture file. And we'd like our character to have exactly the same animation. You see that the height is not the same, the bone structure is not the same, but it's okay. Motion Builder does real-time retargeting. So I'm going to say my little character will be animated with the punch guy, and you see that the animation is automatically retargeted onto my character, and now it's fully attached to this character. When I'm happy with this animation, I'll just go here and say update 3ds Max, and 3ds Max will be updated, and now you'll see that my little character has exactly that same animation. So Max was updated with the animation that we created in Motion Builder. Also, these animations can be saved and loaded. So I did some tweaks to the punch animation, and I've changed the timing of it a little bit to fit with my needs. So I'm going to go here in Scene Assets, Animation, and oops, guys, our game, Scene Animation. Oops, I forgot the wrong menu. Grab the base here, and I'm going to go into My Demo folder, and Scene Assets, Animation, and I'm going to load the punch animation here. So now what we're going to get is the animation that I tweak and adjusted. So he's punching, and he's angry, as you can see. He's angry against what? He's angry against that thumbstack machine. So thumbstack machine is here. He's punching it. Right now we don't have any animation. So for the simulation, or the machine doesn't really interact with the character. So what I'll do is I'll select all of the nodes, all of the objects on the machines here, and I'll open up Mass Effects. So Mass Effects is our dynamics and simulation engine inside of 3ds Max. I'll make all of these object dynamic rigid bodies. And I'll go into the settings here, and I'll say all of these, I want them to start in sleep mode, so they're not going to fall down. I want them to be made of a cardboard, and I want to simulate with something simple that's going to give me real-time feedback. So let's say we're going to choose capsules. So now if I press Simulate, we're going to see that the character is going to punch it, and as he punches the machine there, you get the simulation. Right now, the simulation is not part of 3ds Max. So if I want to load it and send it to a game engine, I need to say bake all. So, or I can just grab the machine here and say bake selected, and it's going to bake the animation for me for the simulation. Here we go. And I'm going to stop it there. So I'm going to let it go. And here we go. So now we have the full animation of the character. I'm ready to send all of this to the game engine. In order to send to the game engine, I'm going to select everything that I have in my scene here. I'm going to say File, Export, Export selected, which is pretty much everything. I'm going to override this FBX file. Yes, I want to override it. I want to export the animation. I want to bake it to make sure that the controllers are supported, and embed the media, which means that all the textures will be embedded into that file. Say OK. Everything will be embedded, and now I can go back here and say this is my folder where I've got my I'm going to open up Unity. I'm going to delete the ones that are already there, show you the process of how it is to bring data into Unity. So you take that anim.fbx file, you just drag it here. It's going to do all of the import process. It's going to give you everything, and then I can take a look at this animation. Right now it's not it's only playing once, so I can go back here and say wrap mode, just loop it. And I'm going to drag this inside of the scene and apply. And now we have our character with animation in there. I'm going to grab the camera, make sure that it's pointing toward that character here. And if I turn on in game mode, you'll see that we have our animation, our full animation right there in Unity. So it's just a drag and drop workflow to bring assets and animation into Unity using the FBX format. So I'm going to minimize this. Actually, I'm going to exit this. I don't want to save. Go back to 3ds Max, and now we're going to talk about a different process, which is taking 3D content and render it as 2D sprites in order to put into a Flash 2D game. So before I move into this, I'm going to show you a clip from Fieldrunners. So it's right here. so you have an idea of how the game looked like. Again, it's Subatomic Studios, and the game is called, oops, that's the wrong video. The one that I want is Fieldrunner here. Sorry about that. Here we go. So this is how the game looks like. So all of these assets were built in 3D and rendered as 2D sprite in order to automate them into the 2D engine. So this is how it looks like. Let's go into the file itself. I'm just going to open this up. And Subatomic. Here we go. So all of those are all the assets from the game. And you'll notice on the left here, I've got multiple tabbed layouts. So this is a new feature of 2013. It allows you to create multiple layout configuration for your viewport. So I've created a viewport here for this guy. So this is a perspective view. This is our main character for the game. We also have a cow. The cow was animated with cat. It's a full 3D object. We have the helicopter here. We have the ostrich. And we have our little guy here that we would like to render as a sprite sequence. In order to render him as a sprite sequence, now we have the full 3D animation of this guy. So the render setup, we've created multiple cameras that look at this character from different point of views. And you see that they're pretty well oriented to the character. What it gives you is that just by filming this animation from different point of view, you're able to render the character go up, go down, go left, go right, and do all of these animation into a single, with a single animation. So if I look at the point of view of the cameras here, so those are the cameras going diagonal. So this is the same animation looked at from different point of views. Same thing here, we've got different directions. So by choosing which camera we render, we can create a sprite sequence that will be that will give us the animation for a specific direction. So to do this, I'm going to go back here and say isolate the soldier. And in Max, we have a render pass system called state sets. So our goal is to render, the multiple passes or multiple cameras. So I'll show you the workflow of rendering multiple passes to a composite in After Effects, which is a tool that we call Media Sync. So I'll go here and I'll say I want to see the save frame to see exactly what I'm going to render. I'm going to go in state sets. I close down this and close down that, and we're going to create a few state sets to render this out. So the first one, I'm going to call that cam, and we're going to call it east. So that's, whoops, camera east. That's going to be the camera pointing east. So I'm going to go in record mode, and it's going to record everything that I'm doing. So if I go here and say camera, and I want to pick the camera going east, now we have our rendering setup to render this camera. If I go out of there, we're going to go back to our perspective view. I can also add a substate, and that substate, I'm going to call that cam east and AO for ambient occlusion. So I would like to have an ambient occlusion pass for this guy. So I'm going to go in record mode. I'm going to go into the material editor. I'm going to drag a material to this guy. Yes, I want to rename this material. And in the diffuse slot, we are going to put the ambient occlusion reflective. We're going to leave it as so. And we're going to make this object fully self-illuminated. So that's my setup for my AO pass. What I want to do now is I want to render these two passes and put them on top of each other. So to do that, I'm just going to go here and say, set up my render outputs. I'm going to put that into the computer, C drive, Louis Marcoux, and render output, and say, OK, that's going to be all rendered there. And I'm going to set path and say states, render all states. So it's going to start to render. I'm going to get some warning for global illumination, but that's fine. And it's going to give me all of the frames that I need for my animation. So I'm going to close this down, close this down. I can go and take a look at what we've just rendered in the compositor view. So we have two passes, or two passes for this guy. If I go a bit closer, we have the ambient occlusion and the output. So I'm going to bring the ambient occlusion at the top here, and I'm going to blend it in multiply mode. So once it's multiplied, this is the setup that I want to send to the compositor. I can go here in the compositor link and say I want to send the footage as an After Effect. Whoops. Create the link here. It's going to be called After Effect _ link, and it's going to be in my render output folder. Save this. And now that we've created this link, we've set up the footage, I can go in After Effects and go and say File, Autodesk link, create link, grab this here, and now we have, If I go back to After Effects, if I double click on this link, we'll see that we have our character there. I can define how much I want to have ambient occlusion on this guy. So if I want to reduce the opacity of the ambient occlusion, I can adjust that. And I can also do some color correction and all of that. So all of these things can be done in After Effects and then rendered out, and we can render it for the sprite. So when you're ready to render or to prepare a sprite, I can go here and I just created a small script, and that's how Subatomic did it as well. So you just grab the one of the frame, and it's going to put them all in a single image, and you'll be able to load that into your 2D engine. And depending where you are in the animation cycle, you show a certain part of the image. So that's it for my presentation. So thank you very much. What we saw is how to take 2D content and bring it into the 3D world, and also how to use 3D animation tool in order to render 2D sprites for a 2D game. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.